Okay, the purpose of today's lesson is we're going to talk about the essential question for Unit 2 and what we're going to be studying in the next few weeks and show our learning. Number one is our essential question is about how people learn. How do people learn, and how is this impacted by experiences, learning styles, background, environment, language, culture, and other influences inside and out of the classroom? I want to break that into its parts. In particular, I'm going to go to experiences, culture, and other influences inside and out of the classroom. We're going to end the unit with materials about that in particular because we have a lot of research that has recently been done on brains and on people and people who live in poverty and people who face what are known as acute childhood experiences and the like. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a lot of reading because actually one of the biggest reasons why students are not successful compared to students who come from higher socioeconomic status is because brains on poverty operate differently than those not in poverty. And we're going to learn about that and how schools can have a huge impact on that particular part of learning. But we're also going to go back then to learning styles and background, environment, language, and culture. We're going to be studying most of the regular theories of Erik Erikson, Jean Piaget, Vygotsky, just to name a few. And that's some of the background for the most educational, future educational professions students would have to read anyway as part of child psychology, but it's kind of a review for us. Nonetheless, the standards that we are going to be covering are to apply basic theory, learning theories and principles to learners. Um, we're going to examine how effective teaching practices accommodate learning styles, learning differences, and special needs. And actually, everybody's got special needs in this day and age. We are going to explain how language, culture, and educational background affect learning in schools. Because when I was teaching in an affluent suburban high school, how I taught there was significantly different than how I am required to teach here. And there's a lot of reasons why that have to do with language, culture, and educational background. We are going to talk about the physical, emotional, social, and intellectual development of children and adolescents. Many of you are going into early childhood education. What is different about early childhood education versus secondary and middle school is significant. And we're going to address some of those concerns as we talk about the different stages of development, both physically, emotionally, and socially, and cognitively for that matter. Our next standard that we're going to cover is we're going to be describing management strategies that promote positive student behavior while engaging students in learning. One of the biggest things that you probably notice as a student in this high school is that many students, not all of them, but there's a handful of students who do not have a background in educational stuff, and so they come to school, and because their life is tumultuous or their parents have failed them to socialize them when it comes to being decent or knowing how to ask for things, or because the students have been in a state of fight or flight for most of their lives, you have to pick up the pieces. And so there's some management styles and some techniques that you can use as an educator that are going to make your life easier as an educator. And it will eventually heal the student and help them to be a better student. And in the long run, could have a significant positive impact on their lives. Standard 2.6 is explaining how schedules, activities, routines, and transitions promote learning. Here in Fort Wayne Community Schools, we talk about reciprocal teaching, the teaching learning cycle. We talk about prime time learning, where you're introduced to a new concept or an idea, and then you have to practice it for a significant amount of time, stop, get feedback, rest, and then do that. We also talk about engaging things in multiple intelligences and things like that, which actually is one of the things we're going to study. Standard of this unit is we are going to identify the cultural, environmental, and family factors that affect students in schools. Toward the end of our unit, we are going to do a lot of reading about acute childhood experiences. One of the family experiences that has a negative impact on students' learning is like having a family member that is either depressed, abusive, or has been incarcerated. So there's an awful lot of cultural and environmental and family things that go into whether or not a student is likely to be able to learn at the same rate as somebody who has not experienced such a thing. Which then brings us to the very last part of this introduction, which is, well, how am I going to test you on this? To exhibit your learning, our performance-based task number 3 is you are going to create the profile of 2 students that includes their learning style, using like Gardner's multiple intelligences. We're going to address the rigor of tasks that the students can learn from Bloom's taxonomy and social cognitive theory. You early elementary people, you're going to pick probably a student at a grade level or in kindergarten to do your learning style inventory for this. Cultural heritage, and we're going to talk about how you're going to determine their heritage, and then their story slash socioeconomic status of family trauma informed schools. The reason that you're going to create profiles is not unlike what we did in the last unit, where you read up on a lot of research about the legal and ethical challenges that teachers face. And then you had to come up with hypothetical scenarios in which things took place, and then a decision point needed to take place. And then you were able to come up with scenarios accordingly. Similar for you as you're going to create the profiles for your students. And we'll talk about that when we get closer to the performance-based task. We will also have a performance-based task number 4 to go with this unit as well. This is to be determined because, as we talked about last week, some of you have been paired up with students that you are helping in classes. And ideally, I'd like for you to do some sort of case study about that student that you are observing, helping, etc. And we'll talk about the rules and regulations for how you can do that while maintaining privacy, etc. But in the event that you do not have a student that you are currently mentoring, we will find another way, either through observation of classrooms, or I also have another option for a performance-based task that if the other two don't work out, we'll figure out the fourth. But that is the entire unit in a nutshell. Those are the essential questions that go with it, the standards that we're going to be following, and an overview of the types of things that we are going to be learning about and reading. So that is my first screencastify. Let's see if it turned out all right.